So what we want to do is we want to talk about the domain and range of our 6 trig functions. So the first thing I want to look at is I want to look at the unit circle and I want to look at the values. And remember the radius is 1. So x squared plus y squared is equal to 1. So if you look around here at the values, these are all less than 1. And here we have 1. So the domain and the range of our sine and cosine are going to be from -1 to 1, or -1 to 1 for cosine. And then we think about tangent. It could be any kind of relationship. That doesn't really matter. And so it turns out that the tangent has a range of -infinity to +infinity. And so cotangent has the same. And then we'll talk about secant and cosecant in a little bit. But then let's also talk about the domain. So look, for sine and cosine, it can be anything, right? But if you think about tangent and cotangent, tangent and cotangent are reciprocals. Well, they're reciprocals as well, but they are ratios. So tangent is sine over cosine. So wherever cosine is 0, tangent's undefined. So it turns out that at all the pi over 2's, tangent's undefined. And similarly for cotangents, when sine is 0, so whenever, for all the pi's, we have a cotangent that is undefined. Okay, so now let's think about our domains and ranges. So we said that sine and cosine, right, can use for the domain is everything, right? And for the range goes from -1 to 1. So for cosecant and secant, it's kind of the same thing. I have 1 over sine and 1 over cosine, and remember, whenever that's 0, it's undefined. So we have to decide, when is it 0? Well, sine is 0 at pi, 2 pi, -pi, and all those values. And cosine is 0 at pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, -pi over 2, and all those values. And this is similar for, this would be for tangent, and this would be for cotangent because the sine is on the bottom. So let's see if we could figure out our trig functions now. So sine has a domain of all the reals, and its range is from -1 to 1. Cosine has a domain of all reals, and its range is from -1 to 1. Tangent has a domain of x such that x doesn't equal n times pi over 2. So n is any integer. So any multiple of n over 2. Actually, it's any odd integer, because if it was even, then it would be 2 pi over 2, which would be pi, and it is defined there. Its range are all the reals. Okay, cotangent, we'll do that next. That's the easiest co-function, or a reciprocal function, and it's all x such that x doesn't equal n pi, or n is an integer, and I don't have to worry about odds or evens because there's no fraction, and its range is all reals. So we have 2 more. We have cosecant, and that's 1 over sine. Its domain, because it's 1 over sine, is x, and x can't equal n pi, or n is an integer. And its range is the opposite of what the sine range is. So it's from -infinity to -1, and 1 to infinity, because round bracket, because it's the inverse, so it's not at -1 to 1. And secant has a domain of x such that x doesn't equal n pi over 2, or n is an odd integer. And again, it's the same as cosecant. It's from -pi to -1 and 1. I'm sorry, -infinity to -1 and 1 to infinity.